everybody. Welcome back to Pop Culture Warrior. I am your host, CQ. I am super excited for this one. This is going to be a really good one. My guest tonight is one of the founders and writers of Zenescope, the independent comic book and graphic novel publisher that has been delivering some of the most original and captivating stories in the industry, with a passion for storytelling and a knack for creating compelling characters. He's written for some of Zenescope's most popular titles, such as Grimm Fairy Tales, Oz, Wonderland, Neverland, Robin Hood, and Unbound. He has also been instrumental in expanding Zenescope's partnerships with various media outlets, such as Discovery Channel and History Channel, CBS, and more. He is a true master of pop culture who has inspired millions of readers and fans around the world. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce you to our distinguished guest tonight, a true legend of the Zenescope, as is Zenescope. Please welcome to the show, everybody, the amazing Ralph Tedesco. Yay!
True legend got me.
A true legend of Venoscope and Zenescope.
Legend in my own mind.
Hey man, well, hey, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking the time to speak with the audience and with us. We're looking forward to this, man, and you've been so accommodating to make time in your schedule for this. Coming to us live from what looks like the bare Motel 6 that you got back there.
I thought we weren't going to talk about it.
I had to poke fun.
I just moved. I don't know what you guys are saying. You're like, oh, don't worry, no one's going to see your back.
Yeah, it's just that way. You know, like with the DM, when you go to like the DMV to take your headshots, it's just a bare background. That's what you got going on. It's cool.
That's good. I kind of like it. You would think I was saying, you'd think I had all my arms.
Right. You would think
I've been lazy. I have to get to it.
You would think as the founder of one of the most, and some of the most gorgeous artwork I have ever seen laid on the page has come from Zenescope, and yet your walls are bare.
Judge me by my back. Judge me by my answers.
There you go. There you go. Outstanding.
If you ever have me back, I'll have a picture.
Yes, right. We'll do like a green screen in the background with just the comics in the background and whatnot.
Because we do our own live streams. We do a thing called Movie Club with our fans. Once a month we do a movie club with the Clerks act. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Clerks, but the act Clerks come on and we review movies. So I usually will raise up the green screen and put like the movie background on. So then I don't have to worry about it. But
nice.
Tonight I didn't do it.
We get the raw, unedited, unfiltered Ralph.
Yellow couch and dogs in the background. Hopefully stay asleep until we start to be announced.
Perfect. So first question out the gate, same I give everybody. What is your military connection?
My main military connection is through my business partner Joe's father. A lot of his family members serve. So we've always been pretty tied into the military community that way. As you know, we met, I guess that's how we may have met then, is that through Wounded Warriors. We've done a lot of work with them. Some of my family has served, but not as close to me as Joe's side of the family who's served. But we, it's something we're passionate about, just supporting the military. And it's just once you guys asked me to be on, it was like an easy yes, of course, because we also have a lot of fans in the military, and we do a lot of military covers too all the time. So that's my closest connection, I'd say.
That's awesome. So obviously we're a pop culture talk show. We talk everything: comics, movies, TV, whatever. And when you say like, what do you geek out about, right? That it's so much more encompassing. It could be music and cars and like there's just so many things. But outside of obviously your work in the comic book industry, what do you geek out about?
It's sports. I have my Phillies hat on there. I'm a big sports fan. I think that's my biggest geek pleasure. Outside of my own work and outside of movies too. I've always been a movie buff. Growing up, that's why I wanted to get into this industry, was just being a fan of movies growing up in the 80s especially. 80s and 90s. I wasn't started acting in college and got really big into that. So I'd say movies. I wouldn't say I'm a cinephile in terms of like I know all these obscure movies that people will like throw out there, but I've seen plenty of freaking movies. And I imagine all your audience is the same as I am there. And then sports is my other guilty pleasure. I'm literally studying my fantasy football. It's a dorky thing. I mean, people are like, it's basically, you know, it's Dungeons and Dragons for sports is what it is. Yeah. So I've been studying that this past weekend, because I need to catch up on my fantasy football.
You got a team name yet? Team name?
Our league is going on 30 years. So my team name has never changed. It's embarrassing. My first team name is called the Pimp Daddies, because I thought that was funny when I was 18 when we started this. When we started this league, we were like 17, 18 years old. I thought the Pimp Daddies was such a cool name. Never changed the name. So my oldest team is the Pimp Daddies. Then I have Prestige Worldwide, based off the movie Step Brothers, is my other team name in my other league. And my third team name is I can't even remember it. It's another movie reference, and I changed it last year, and I forget what I changed it.
That's awesome.
Not no one cares. But yeah, 30 years of fantasy football will do that too. So
that's funny. Wow, 30 years.
I've been a fantasy football guide. I would have been even one of the first.
we're doing a station league, man. You got to get in on it, man. A listener league.
You're expert, man. I know everything. I'm telling you.
That's it. We'll talk. We'll talk.
Teams.
All right. So I know, I obviously I love to research my guests and get to know you, and obviously to learn your background and your history. I know you've had a very personal journey as a comic book creator. It started from your childhood. So to explain to the audience, how did you discover your passion for comics and storytelling? And then maybe, I don't know, what are obstacles and opportunities that you've kind of faced along the way to get to where you are now?
Obstacles is crazy. Yeah, I'll be honest. I wasn't a huge comic book fan growing up. I didn't really know much about comics. The passion, I guess, is more on the movie side and the writing side, the storytelling side. I read some stuff when I was little. I was into it for like a period of time. Then I was I guess I was more into sports and for a little while. And then my business partner, Joe, who you might have met, I feel like you may have met he and I were writing together. We were writing a couple. We started writing screenplays. He found out I was acting, and we were friends growing up. And he had mentioned comic books to me, and he's like, "Well, I kind of have this idea for a comic book." We had written a screenplay together, and we were shopping it around. I was living in LA at the time, and he mentioned comics, and I was like, I don't know a lot about comics, but I don't think that's for me. I can't write. And because I thought it was just mainly superheroes, and I loved like superhero movies. Superman was my favorite movie as a kid, or Superman's and all that stuff. But I wasn't reading the comics. I didn't know much, and I was just like, I don't think I can write. I just don't know. And he's just like, no, they're making all these movies out. They're like, you can write about whatever. They're making all these comics out of, you can do anything. So the first comic I read fully, like really picked up and read the series was Preacher. So I read Preacher first, and I was like, okay, that's fucked up. So then I realized like you really could do anything. And then I got a little bit into Hellblazer comics, and I'm one of the only people who like the movie Constantine. And I love that movie, and I think it holds up. And then I saw History of Violence, and I realized that was a graphic novel. So all this stuff was like, okay, like you can do anything in comics you want. So that's when I kind of felt like, okay, I can do that. I mean, I know how to write I know how to tell a story. Yeah, I think like we could do I was in my mid-20s at that point and kind of started kicking around. And Joe had that. I had this first idea was the Grimm fairy tales, sort of take these fairy tales that were Disneyfied, go back to the original creepy stories, which they are. The original stories are pretty creepy and weird and messed up. And let's like make our own versions. Like let's go back to the originals, tell an original tale. And we were big fans of Twilight Zone and Tales from the Crypt and those types of stories. So we wanted to do our Tales from the Crypt version of fairy tales. And I thought that was such a cool idea. I was like, is anybody doing this? And at the time, I think the series Fables was out, but that wasn't anything like we were doing. And this was, again, early 2000s. And we decided, let's get Al Rio to do some of the covers for it. Like, we didn't know what we were doing. We just wanted to do. They're like, how about a sexy Red Riding Hood cover? And that'd be cool. Like, the book has nothing to do with sex. Like, there's no sex in the book, but like, why not have a sexy Red Riding Hood with a werewolf?
It sells, man. It sells.
Yeah, that thing blew the fuck up for us. You said I didn't have to censor myself.
No, go for it.
That's on you. That's on you. So yeah, I mean, that first issue, I don't know, I wish it was hanging on my wall, I would show you. But yeah, the first issue of this werewolf bearing down this like Red Riding Hood wearing like a red nightie type thing, and she's holding her back. Now she's grown up in our version, obviously. She's not a child. We're not freaking herbs. But the idea was an adult Red Riding Hood being stalked by a werewolf. And then we had all these, like, the next one was Cinderella. Then the third issue, I think, was Hansel and Gretel, if I'm not mistaken. And we just were doing these, like, it's almost like one-shot issues of Grimm fairy tales. I went on a tangent there. I know that wasn't...
No, not at all.
Let's hear how it started. I'll rein it back. So...
No, dude, you feel we got time, man. You ramble as much as you want. I find this stuff so fucking fascinating. And just, when you're starting out something like this, you don't know where it's going to go, right? And so to think, and I saw it was like, I think it was like 2005 is when you guys first launched at, I think it was at like Wizard World Philly, something like that. And just you sitting on a booth going like, man, I hope someone's interested in this, to now, here we are almost 20 years later. That's incredible. I mean, that's incredible. Can you maybe take us back to the inception of the idea? Like, I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but like, right. What really made you think, because you were into movies and the storytelling, like what about that made you go like, oh, comics is going to be the way we're going to go with it? And I guess, like, what did you see? Like, what was your end point at that beginning stage, right? What did the future look for you at that point?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I don't know. I think we always were enamored by the film and TV side and wanting to do movies. And we saw that, like, comics at that point were starting to be made in, a lot of, besides the superhero stuff, it wasn't really. Iron Man was like that one that came out. Remember, Marvel came out with Iron Man, the first one, in 07 or 08, whatever that was, and that's what really set the Marvel universe off. I mean, Hulk with Ed Norton before that, but really, and so this was pre that. Like, it wasn't happening to that level. But we saw, like, hey, there's movies being made out of comic books, and it's not always superheroes. Case in point, A History of Violence, Rose of Tradition. So I think part of it was like, hey, we can create our own IP, our own intellectual property, and publish it, and maybe get some readers, and then try to. I don't know. It was a very naive way of looking at things back then. Like, if we knew what we know now, we probably would have been scared to threaten to start our brand and do this, because there are a billion hurdles that we can jump over throughout the process, and just starting a publishing company without it going under and having the money to be able to sustain that without taking on any investment capital. We're one of the few companies that don't come into this with investment behind us. We just came into it ourselves without any, with our own money, which wasn't a lot. We were just 2 working sticks. If I knew that going in, we probably wouldn't even tried it. But like the idea was sort of like, hey, like we're in our 20s, we could fail. If we fail, and it's not going to kill us. We didn't have. Joe had a family. I didn't have family. So I was a single guy, and Joe had did have some family, so it was probably a little riskier for him. And we just wanted to be able to get something out there to because we knew we thought we were pretty good storytellers. You never know. I mean, we publish stuff that I'm sure people are like, this sucks. And I'll read old stuff and be like, this sucks. But at the same time, you're always going to judge yourself the harshest. But then certain things I read and I'm like, wow, we did a good job here. But I think it was just throwing caution at the wind at the time and just being kind of young and naive and kind of the whole world's in front of you at that. And just kind of with that, like you mentioned, that first convention was 2005. We printed 10,000 copies of the first issue of Fairy Tale, which is crazy. We didn't have 10. We didn't even have. It wasn't in Diamond yet. There was no such thing as Kickstarter. There's no Diamond. We weren't in Diamond. Diamond existed, but we weren't in it. We just printed 10,000 copies of Weirdos, and we obviously eventually sold out of that and printed it again. But that first convention, we didn't know what to expect, and we got flooded. We were flooded in our booth because we got booth mob. We were like, that was early days, man. Like, we had girls, my girlfriend at the time and her friends dressed up in fairy tale outfits and just looked cute. We were getting massive traffic to our booth because we were the only. There was no real cosplay. It was Wizard World Philly 2005. And cosplay wasn't yet taking off like it did a few years in. Like, maybe it wasn't like Comic-Con in San Diego, because I think that was around the time Camp Comic-Con started getting big. But in Wizard World Philly, it certainly wasn't. And everybody was just coming by our booth like, what's this? What's going on? What? And it was recognizable. It was like a Red Riding Hood on a cover with a werewolf, and it was just like sold itself. It was just an easy sell.
This is it. There was definitely a time, booth babes. That was the thing. There's a period of time where there's E3 comics, all those. Booth babes were the thing to draw the eyeballs.
I can't speak to. I don't know what conventions were like in the 90s. Or like, I don't know because I wasn't around then at those conventions. But like, I know when we started, the booth babes was huge, and we were the company that was bringing the babes, and that helped us a lot.
But like you said, I think the artwork really sold it. Again, it's captivating. It's different in the way it's. I don't know. It's hard to explain. Like, when I think of it, I see it clearly, and it stands very apart from all the other things you would typically see at a Comic-Con or at other companies or the comic companies, and so it's very distinct and unique. And so you guys definitely, it puts a stamp in your mind of the logo. It's like a dragon, right? It's like
it's a dragon logo.
It's so cool.
Then the little Zenescope underneath it. The tail makes the S. I mean, what?
You guys are crushing it. And as you're telling me the story about how you guys started and like printing 10,000 copies to something you don't even know if you'll sell one. Like my first thought is like, how dare you? Like, who has the balls to do something so dumb but so perfect and for it to work out as well as it did? That's incredible.
I don't know. Honestly, it was blind stupidity. I think we also printed. I think the volume 1 of the first trade paperback collection of issues 1 through 6. I think we printed. I want to say 10,000 printing that too, and that's crazy. And I remember our brand manager at Diamond at the time going, "You're not gonna sell 10,000 trade paperbacks. Like you're just not gonna do it." Like, and we were like, oh, "There's my dog's appearance." And we were like, "Oh no, we'll do it. Like we'll do it." And then we did. We sold through them fairly quickly, and we ended up multiple printings of that first line. We probably sold, I don't know, 100-some thousand copies of that first trade paperback, which is big for a comic book, for an independent trade paperback comic book. So we were, again, I think it was just kind of bold, blind luck. We knew we had something going with this idea because no one had done it before. And then we kind of started to evolve this idea, this universe of like reinventing fairy tale, reinventing classic tales with Return to Wonderland, which Raven Gregory wrote. That series really blew the doors off. I mean, it was like sort of this like consecutive sort of, it was Grim Fairy Tales, which was garnering a big presence, and we were on par with like the other independents out there, like Walking Dead at the time before it was a TV series. It was us and Walking Dead as the main two of the main selling indies. And then Return to Wonderland, and we did that big trilogy of Wonderland, reinventing Alice in Wonderland story for modern day, making it dark and twisted and sexy, the sexy covers, of course. And then doing it with Neverland, and then sort of creating this universe and branding the company as this like, doing the reinventions and reimaginings of fairy tales and fables and stuff like that. And then we also did some horror stuff. Like we got the license to the movie Seven. I feel like now the younger generation doesn't know the movie Seven, but Seven was a huge deal in the '90s, and we did a graphic novel based on that, and that really helped put us on the map. But I think the big thing was when we inquired to get the rights to Seven, the New Line Cinema wanted us to do Final Destination as well, and that was sort of a package deal. We had to do both, and we were like, license Final Destination, what are we gonna do with that? It ended up being such a blessing in disguise, because we sold Circuit City bought like 200,000 copies of the comic and shrunk it and put it in the DVD, the third DVD. So we got an order for basically $200,000, and we were like a brand new company, just got a huge order. And we always joke that we put Circuit City out of business because they went out of business like 6 months later. But we got this huge order, and we really needed that money at the time. So we were like, it costs a lot of money to publish comics. It's not cheap. So that was like a big blessing for us, because we didn't know, we were kind of hand to mouth for a long time.
I'm curious, man, because obviously, and you don't know where it's gonna go, like we said when you start. But please, God, tell me you squirreled away like a first print number one, or like you have these put away right there. They're safe.
Personally, I think I have a couple at my mom's place back somewhere. When I moved, I stored a bunch of stuff there. So I don't know, but like most of our stuff that we do have in archives locked away. So like we do have like 10 copies of issue 1, but not a lot. I mean, the one thing that really bothers me is the 7. I had like a few, and we can't print it anymore because we don't have the license anymore. And that thing you can find online. If you find it, it's a few $100 at least. And I don't have any left. And I remember giving one away to this girl. I was into her. She was like, we were like kind of hooking up, and like it was one of those situations where I was probably into her more than she was into me. And I gave her like and she was a huge fan of the movie, and I gave her my last copy. And then we like broke up, and Um, but I have one in German. So I have a hardcover of 7 in German, which might be worse. If you have any German viewers, make me an offer. Like certain things I wish I had, but I'm very bad at. I'm personally horrible at hoarding. I'm not good at hoarding. So all my stuff's always just it's somewhere. I don't.
Yeah, I'm not much of a collector either. I don't.
Yeah, Joe is. My business partner's the same way. He collects. I mean, he's huge. He collects everything Star Wars, all that, everything. Where I'm less of a. I'm bad.
That's it. I heard that's the greatest way to live. It's very streamlined, right? It's only what you need.
It's freeing. I don't get it that. My brother is the opposite. He loves collecting. Super organized collections. I'm just lean and mean. As you can see by my bare walls.
I'm surprised you have a chair in the room, right? You could just sit on the floor. It's
amazing how we got that.
So talking about the company, obviously, very well known for crafting these, interconnected universes with that, like you said, that dark twist. What are your thoughts on what's the allure of having this kind of multiverse and then getting to explore these characters and going a lot deeper, like you said, with these fairy tales? Why do you think people are so enamored by it?
I guess because, I would hope because, these stories are the fairy tale stuff. These stories have been around for hundreds of years. There's something inherently intriguing about them, I think. And they weren't being retold for adults before we started that I know. And we were one of the first to do it. It kind of became, we were everybody was oh, they're just doing X-rated fairy tales. And that wasn't it at all, just because we had a couple seconds, a sexy cover didn't mean. But I get the reason, I guess, behind it, because people are going to jump the book by its cover, right? So I get that, but we were doing something new. And when people would pick that up and read it, they're like, oh, this is cool. I haven't seen fairy tales like this. And I think that was intriguing. And then you saw this it was weird because we came up kind of early in doing this. We were out pitching this in 06, 07 in Hollywood. And literally people were we don't know what to do with this. How do we do a fairy tales TV series? That's not gonna work. And then literally a few months later, we see Grimm on TV, that show. And I was well, that's how you do it. That was how you do it. Yeah. And then you started seeing movies do it. You started seeing everybody kind of jump in. But for us, it's been sort of evergreen. I just saw Boom come out with a new, Dark Alice in Wonderland this year. And I was oh, come on. We've seen it. We did that 18 years ago. But it is evergreen. Anybody can do whatever they want with fairy tales, and you're seeing it right now. Disney now redoing their own stuff, and it's just for us. It's always been synonymous with our brand, and what we've done that I think is different is we've kind of created a shared universe with our characters, and then introduced brand new original characters into that universe. That aren't based on any public domain or any fairy tale characters. It's just brand new. We have our staples, our female Robin Hood, our female Van Helsing, our character Seela Matters, who's actually quote unquote Snow White. We have a Belle, but then we do other characters like Masumi and Mercy Dante and all these other one, Hellchild, and that are live in that universe, but then we've created ourselves. So we've created one of the biggest shared universes in all comic books. Outside of Marvel and DC, I think we are we might be the biggest shared universe out there. As far as I understand, as far as I know. I mean, Valiant at some point maybe had a bigger shared universe. I don't know. There's not many other companies that do shared universes like this, as big as ours. So it's something we're definitely proud of, and it's not all we do. I mean, we do, as you may know, like we do offshoots. Not everything we publish fits within that universe.
Yeah, you mentioned something earlier that I'm curious about too, because talking about the fairy tales and kind of and where they come from. So this idea that, before they were Disneyfied, I feel like these tales were important because they were meant to teach lessons, right? So like, the Goldilocks and the Three Bears, right? And like, you don't go snooping around and some other person's shit, or like you said, the Red Riding Hood of this idea of like, no stranger danger and all, like these are like old timey pivotal stories to have meaning. So the idea that you guys can take them and then give them new life, and again, not in that fairy tale or superhero way, but just grounded, kind of gritty with a little twist, little supernatural kind of elements to it, and like that's a really cool thing to do. And I'm wondering with the covers, because I know as a guy who social media and posting things, like there's an element of you almost want not to antagonize the audience, right? But kind of give them something to engage with. So when you put out a product that's like on the inside, it's like, hey, this great story, but you package it as like, oh, this is smut, and it's like you get, because people are going to look at it and immediately like, oh, fuck this thing. Like they're selling porn to children. And it's like, it's was it the old there's no bad press, right? There's only good press, kind of thing. Like, is that something you guys were intentional with, or was it more of like, we're gonna sell the eye candy kind of thing and just attract eyeballs? Because I mean, I think it works both ways.
Yeah, it was that. I mean, I would say early on it was like the eye candy. We knew what the audience of these folks was. It was, not older, but like skewed older. They're not teenagers buying comics at the time. It was generally the Comic-Con audience is over 25 or upwards of 50 plus. So, and it was male. It was a male dominated industry. I mean, there was some females into comics and reading comics, and that's grown. And it's funny because we have tons of female readers who love the covers. The only people complaining about the covers are people I wouldn't care to listen to be honest with you. It used to bother me so much more because I'd be like, no, just read the book. And we used to get slammed on social media from like a lot of far left liberal
mom groups.
And I'm not going to get political. I'm very, if anything, I'm the most middle of the road person you could think of, and I hate politicizing stuff. It's very frustrating when you're reading stuff about like how your covers are so offensive, and it's like, dude, what happened to free speech and free, like this was what the liberals stood for 20, 30 years ago. Like the idea of like not judging things like that, like sexuality. So it's like it totally flipped. And it used to bother me like to no end. And I was like, hey, like we're selling books, go do you. And then I started realizing a lot of noise also came from people in the industry who hated us. And competitors or other or artists, or not necessarily artists. I think more of some writers and like some people who just wanted to be better and bash us, whether they were popular already or not, or just struggling and kind of mad that they didn't do it. They didn't think it was. And it still happens time to time. It's not as I don't think as crazy as it was for a while. It's an interesting dynamic that people would get so wound up, and then I started realizing like, and I also see like we'll get tagged if there's like any sexual artwork at all. It's always like compared to Zenescope. So it'd be like this terrible cover of some girl with her, like, oh, it would look like a bad porno. And like, they're like, that's no, Zenescope must be editing this or something. And that used to bother me because I'd be like, we don't edit that shit. But then I was like, you know what? Like, if you're gonna make us anonymous, if we're gonna be that brand that you're constantly referencing, like you said, no press is bad press. So I kind of was like, I embraced it. So I was like, oh wait, that's good for us. Like, fuck. Like, you know, having haters, at least you're in the game, right? When you have haters, you're in the game, and for us, it was like, and now it's like we're gonna do what we want, and we kind of embrace that, and I don't care anymore. Like, it is what it is. Like, it's like, we're gonna publish what we think sells. We don't do all our cover. You know, we do 4 covers per issue. People won't even know. Like, we do a sexy cover, but we also do an action cover. We do like a monster cover. Every single issue has like a cover for anybody who wants something different. But the ones that are sexy or have the boob, the cleavage, they're the ones that are going to get the most attention.
Right.
And to me, that's probably a good thing. Yeah. So to answer your question, it was never with the intention of going, we're gonna troll people. But you know, if we're trolling people while we're selling comics, that's fine.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, you're not making waves unless you got detractors, unless you got haters, unless you got trolls. I mean, you know, you're not doing anything, right? You guys, you're making waves, and that's awesome.
If you're boring and no one's talking about you, you're boring. It's fine. Now, granted, companies out there that are doing very well, that people that have an image of like, oh, they're like Boom. Boom's a good company that has a lot of fans and sells a lot of books. And, you know, they don't generally, as far as I know, do sexy covers. But for them, they never will have a shared universe because they're a creator-owned company. We're not a creator-owned company, and we never took investment capital. Again, that's one thing that sets us apart, is we always had to do everything in pocket. So for us, we had to figure out how to make money. We didn't have a curve of going, well, we can burn through a few $1 million, so somebody gave us 10 million, and we can just burn through it and get this going and put $1 million into marketing and doing this and buying this and doing. We never had that, so we had to just figure out the grassroots way, and I think people forget that.
That's incredible. So obviously you've had a hand in a lot of the different popular titles. The fairy tales, Oz, Wonderland, Neverland, Robin Hood, Unbound, all of them. Which I'm just curious, which of these has been like your personal favorite and why?
Well, it's a tough question. I mean, early on, obviously, Grim Fairy Tales, I was writing it with Joe for almost 100 issues before kind of handing it off, and now our publisher Dave Franchini took over the book recently, and we've had other writers write on it as well over the years. But so I think early on it was definitely Grim Fairy Tales because I was very connected with that story. And then Grim Tales of Terror was our next big anthology series that was very much in the vein of like as I mentioned before, I'm a huge Tales from the Crypt fan, and you know, Grim Tales of Terror was very much an homage to Tales from the Crypt and those types of comics back in the day. And that became sort of my passion project for a while. And we were reinventing urban legends or ghost stories you may have heard growing up, or public domain horror, and just reinventing it like we did with the Grim Fairy Tales, and just putting our own new twist on these old stories that you may have heard growing up, or you may have, like, you know, a lot of urban legends like Bloody Mary, just a bunch of. I won't rattle them off because I'll take it. My brain's not working, but that was my baby for a while. And then more recently, and I'm actually writing a new Grim Tales of Terror. We started doing an anthology, which are like 72 pages, almost like shorter graphic novels that we publish every quarter or every 6 months. And so I'm writing one of those right now. So like an original horror story, which is more my passion, I think. And then, like, more recently wrote something called All Guts No Glory, which was a comedy. It was a horror comedy, which I love doing comedy. So like any chance I get to do like a comedic genre series, and that got really good. It was really well received. It got some cool reviews from people, and like I got a lot of good feedback on it. So it made me proud that like it felt like my writing has started to evolve too. And then working with Joe on Man Goat and the Bunny Man, which is a huge hit for us. Joe came up with this concept about two best friends who are cryptids, a man goat and a bunny man, and it's sort of like they fight evil behind the scenes, but they're not accepted by society because they're cryptids, and they have to hide from the real world. But it's a comedy and it's hilarious, and we worked on cracking that story a couple years ago at a story conference, and Joe now writes it, and that's just been something that's been a lot of fun. So doing some of the comedy stuff has really been fun the last couple of years.
That's awesome. I'm curious because obviously you've been in the business now for so long. The comic book industry has undergone significant changes over the years. Share some of your insight on how Zenescope has adapted to the shifts in kind of the comic book culture over the years. Like, what lessons have you learned from this?
I could do a course on this and stuff. Yeah, I've seen, like, it's funny because it is weird now seeing companies imitate you. That first started 10-ish, 12-ish years ago. There was a company, I won't name names because I don't want to be a total dick, but there was a company that was basically pretending it was us. And like hiring the same exact artists and doing the same kinds of things and just trying to be us. And that was weird because we were like, wait, and we weren't even that old then. We were like 7 years in, maybe 6 years in, and we were like seeing this new shit. And now it happens more often. I'm not going to say everybody out there doing sexy covers is imitating Zenescope. It's not the case. I just feel like we probably influenced some of that over the years. And then there's some people who I can tell. I'm like, they just imitate what they do. So I guess it's flattering to a point where it's partly annoying because you're like, ugh. And you see the stuff you used to get blasted for getting popular. It's relevant. People are like, oh, if I do sexy covers, maybe I'll make money. So I've seen more of that in the last few years. I've seen the industry sort of shift into becoming more creator-owned because people are able to publish themselves because of Kickstarter and Indiegogo, but mainly Kickstarter, which is huge for the industry, huge for independent creators. I fucking wish we had Kickstarter when we started because it would have saved us a lot of stuff. It would have really helped. But it's still, we use it. We do a Kickstarter every quarter usually for ancillary products. We don't usually use it to publish new stuff, but some companies do. I mean, like if you look at Brian Polito's Lady Death, Kickstarter is his publishing format. And I think that's where the industry really evolved, is the Kickstarter. It's amazing how many people are really helping, pre-ordering through Kickstarter and pledging to Kickstarter. The evolution of Comic-Con's kind of crazy. Like I mentioned before, when we first started, we were the booth model guys. Now we barely use booth models. Like you go to Comic-Con, there's just models walking around in their elaborate costumes. That's evolved. Comic-Con's just evolved in general. It's just it's crazy how big it's become. And then it took that, COVID. It took a big hit with COVID, but it's coming back even strong. So it's back like it never stopped. So I've seen this industry sort of really evolve. Like you said, almost 20 years, where there's so many more publishers. Back then it was like you had your top big two, And then you had the next 10 to 15, which was, you know, us, Dynamite, Boom, Aspen, Image. And the Image was getting pretty big. And then once Walking Dead hit, it was like, okay. IDW, they were a little bit bigger. Few companies like that, and then nobody ever, right? Nothing sustainable. Now it feels like there's like 4 to 50 publishers putting stuff regularly. So I think there's room for publishers now to make money. And I think Kickstarter is a big reason.
Yeah. No, that may. I've kickstarted my fair share of it. Eastman, the Ninja Turtles creator, he had a thing, and I was like, man, I gotta get a print signed by Eastman, and so it's a cool way to be able to like support.
Great way for creators to just get out there. I mean, we have a creator who works for us, Pat Shand, who started his own publishing company. I think it's called Space Between, and he crushes Kickstarter. And he has his own little niche. He's got a small little, I think it's like 3-man show, and he's just putting stuff out. And you know, if it's a passion to do it, that's probably the best of any advice I give anybody for doing this sort of thing. It's like, go through Kickstarter, because I don't know if the model that we used back when we started is sustainable unless you have money to burn. Because I've seen that too. You know, I've seen bigger, you know, like companies come in and burn a lot of cash, you know, trying to become a brand name. But you know, the old school companies like us and Dynamite started our, you know, and then these other guys have started before any of that happened, and it was a grind, and it was a big risk. And I think like with Kickstarter, you can it's always a risk no matter what, but at least with that, like kind of you know, make it work. You're not going to risk as much, because you're at the end of the day, if you don't make your goal, you don't make your goal, right?
It's so funny too, because speaking of the two things, how conventions have changed and how like something like Kickstarter is up. I'm in the DC area, Awesome Con DC, which is now I think maybe the 4th biggest convention in the country. Started as a Kickstarter. Just one dude was like, I want a convention here. Yeah, he's like, I want to do a convention here in town, and collaborated with some, like, it was like Rob Liefeld and a couple of other guys. And I went to the first one ever. I was there, and I was a Kickstarter supporter, and it was like this nice little, you're like, oh, it's a quaint little thing. And now it's huge. You know, they bought out by some mega company and whatnot. And I'm like, man, you never know what can come if you just put it out there and try. You know, until you buy 10,000, you print out 10,000 comics.
Right, like you don't have to do it. Back then, maybe you had to do it. Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's afforded a lot of people safety and a way to break into something. You know, I think for any, you know, for us, it's always been like like I said, like we've worked hard at like branding ourselves what we are. And I think for us, it's always, that's the hard part with the new rise up in competition and other people, some other people, not everybody, of course, some other people kind of imitating your model, and you see that a lot, where you're like, okay, that's exactly what we did, cool. and you know, trying to always stay one step ahead of the curve. That's always been the challenge, but it's always good. I mean, honestly, like the good part about that is it keeps you on your toes. Like if you get fat and lazy, then it's the death knell.
Fair point. Now, let me ask you this, because Zenescope obviously has the fan base, it's dedicated, it's engaged. Like, what strategies have you guys kind of employed to kind of create that immersive experience beyond the comics? where because you guys foster this sense of community, man, and it's this shared enthusiasm, man. How do you guys build on that?
How do we build on like sustaining that, you mean, or how do we expand
growing it and fostering?
How to expand it? I would love to take notes. But yeah, I mean, as far as sustaining, I think for us, it's like we've always been very in your face company as far as like going to all the Comic Cons we can and doing live streams. When COVID hit, we were doing, Whatnot was around, I guess, but like Whatnot's blown up in the last couple of years, but like we still do every month. We do live streams you buy straight from our live stream, you go on the air, we do artist interviews where we do, like I mentioned earlier, we do a movie club every month with like our friends from the Clerks cast, and like I get on there with them and we talk movies and just staying involved with like your fans. That's how it's worked for us. Building our fan base through Comic Cons has been huge for us. I mean, that was our market for several years. It still is. Going to conventions and just showing up and meeting people. And then that's how. And then now we do VIP events. We just had one in Philly last month, 2 weeks ago. We do 2 a year. We invite. So we have a VIP membership. That's huge for us too. You sign up $99 for life. You don't have to pay dues. You're just in it. And you get certain perks. You get points. You get mailed stuff. You get discounts. You get special access to special items. And then you also can go to the VIP event. So we're trying to grow that. And it's basically a private convention. We invite artists. We just had 5 artists come out to Philly, and then invite VIPs. They get a ticket. They come in. We have a mini convention. We do meet and greets. We do signings, and then we party. we go out. We rent out. Like this year, we did a burlesque show. We went to a bar and a burlesque show. Went to a piano. We did a piano bar thing. So it's sort of like a weekend of partying with all the Zenescope people, staff, artists, writers. And we do that twice a year, and that's been growing. So those are like things we just do, like to keep, and we love our fans are awesome too. Like that's the fun thing. Like hanging out with our fans is so much fun. Like nobody's a dick. Like I think in the several years we've been doing these VIP events, we might have had one dick. One instance of somebody who was kind of a dick. And it wasn't even that big of a deal. But like the people who go are just like, and it builds that community, and then it's like shared interests too. Like people are going to our events, like meeting friends. So that's always been pretty cool. Because sometimes with Comic Con, it's like, some Comic Con, I think some people feel like they're like alone in their fandom. There's something. I mean, maybe not as much nowadays because of the internet and stuff. You can share fandom online, but I think like meeting people face to face is giving people, oh wow, like, we're both Zenescope fans. And it's just a cool thing we've realized, like for us, at least work for us. So we're doing those events, and then like now we're trying to, and then there's the movie stuff, for film and TV stuff that we're constantly working on. We're doing independently financing a feature film we're working on right now. We just finished the first segment of it. We shot it last month in Los Angeles, and we're super excited, based on our Grim Tales of Terror series. So, yeah.
Yeah, dude, and that's so awesome, man. I was going to actually ask you about that, because I know you've, as a company, you've explored, various different media adaptations, expansions. I mean, how do you approach translating that comic book narrative into another medium, like TV or movie or anything like that?
It's weird because, I think with we learned a lot from our Van Helsing TV series, where we just sort of optioned the material, and then it changed drastically from the comic. And we didn't really have much control over that. It just sort of was like, hey, we want to do something completely different. And I think like we were like, okay, we need to like probably be a little bit more involved in the creative. And that's when I sort of hung up passed along the baton of editor-in-chief of the company and focused more on the film and TV side and developing. And that's what I've been more involved with the last 6 years or so. Just like developing multiple properties for TV and film. I mean, granted, it's not easy. It's like we've had so many things like in the works over the years. I mean, it happens all the time. You'll see it. You'll option something. You'll develop something. You'll get it close to being on the air, and then it just doesn't happen for one reason or another. And then you start rolling that ball back up the hill, and sometimes you have multiple things going on at once, and you think something's going to go, and then it doesn't. Which kind of sparked, us doing our own thing independently this year, and going, hey, we're gonna do a Grim Tales of Terror movie, and we're gonna do it the way we want to do it, and we're gonna kickstart it. So we're gonna actually launch the Kickstarter, probably not this year, but early next year. We'll launch the Kickstarter for the movie to finish the movie because it's an anthology series. So we just decide like, hey, like, we got a couple things in the works, and they may go, and that we are actively developing and involved in the creative, which is exciting for us. But if they don't go, I don't know what's going to happen next. So we just want to like with the comics, we were like, listen, we made this work. Let's just make our own stuff. We'll figure it out. We figured out the comics. We'll figure out the film and TV stuff. So we really do want to bring our comic books to life. In that way, because we're huge movie fans, and that's always been our passion.
Yeah, and it sometimes it bugs me because, like, again, as a fan of comics, as a fan of video games, we want to see these things that we love and we're passionate about brought to life in this way, right? Into this movie way, and we've seen it with books, we've seen it with games, we've seen it with comics, where studio interference or so-and-so's creative whatever, and you're like, this isn't what I wanted. This is so far from what I wanted, and sometimes, man, I'll turn on TV and I'm like who's this show for? Like, it's not funny, it's not interesting, it's not like, and yet there's all these great properties that would fucking kill if done right, and yet it's the same shill, like, mass appeal audience nonsense that they put out there. I don't get it.
I don't get it. I mean, I'm in it and I don't get it. I mean, if I could tell you some of the stories, it would take all night. But there's been some crazy stuff that we've seen and been through and dealt with just in 18 years. And, and everybody's always digging for comics. And that's I can't tell you. I mean, I've taken, my job is to take meetings for film and TV properties, for comic properties for film and TV. And there was a year. I think there was a year where I took 300 some meetings. Like, it was just, it's just an uphill kind of like, and getting things made is crazy. Like, so much stuff always being developed in this industry, constantly, that doesn't happen. So it's almost a miracle when something does. Like, even Van Helsing getting on the air is a miracle, even though it wasn't like our comic book. Just getting it on the air on Sci-Fi Channel and then to Netflix was insane because of the odds, I feel like. And then you think about it and you see like certain comics that have been out there for years that never got made yet. And you're like, wait, that company's been there forever. And it never, and then sometimes you see the ones that do, and then they just fucking fail. Like why was it Y the Last Man?
Yes.
Remember, like, that's a comic that I love that comic. And then they came up, and you thought it was going to be a really successful TV series, and just failed, and it's gone. And that comic's been around.
And I was gonna say,
see that.
The comic was been around forever, and then I know it was like in development hell forever. They've been trying to make it for like 10 years with all these different people attached, and then Oh, it's
That
so
thing,
sad.
what's Kirkman, Walking Dead. I mean, that was in development. We were talking to him back in the day, and he was kind of frustrated with how many times it was like getting optioned and developed and then falling apart. And then AMC of all places gets it, and it fucking becomes the biggest cultural phenomenon in the last 20 years. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
You never know, but like, yeah, I mean, you see it all the time. The industry is not for, it's not for the weak of heart, I guess. It's very demanding. It's very cutthroat. It's everything you've ever heard about it. But it's also like, it's rewarding too when things go right. And it's also, for me, I've met so many cool people and made some great relationships in the industry, like some, awesome writers that I've become friends with and have written for us, and and now who are huge showrunners in the industry. Latoya Morgan being one of them, who's a big comic book writer now. She writes a lot of stuff for Boom now, but like when I met her, she was a staff writer on a show on Shameless, and we just became friends. And then she started writing some Zenescope comics, and now she's got a huge deal and making TV shows and doing a show with J.J. Abrams now. So I got to meet some really cool people in this industry, and that I get to work with and try to develop things with, and that part I do enjoy, even if it doesn't ultimately work out. You hope you get that one thing that you've been working on, because you'll work on. Like, I have one of my good friends, Kevin, who's working on an adaptation of our comic book series, Man, Goat, and the Bunny Man. And we've been working on it for over a year now. And we were out to pitch it when the strike went. And I was like, oh, another. So then you wait another 6 months or whatever it's going to be with the strike. And then it's like back to the, it's like, okay, and we hope we'll sell it. And it would be awesome to make a show with Kevin, and that would be amazing. But we know how hard it is. So it's just like, but it's been a fun process. Yeah. So that's sort of like the give and take of it. Like, you have to look at it like that, I guess.
Yeah, and I do think there's, as hard, I know how as hard as it is to make these things, like, I do feel like there's space for it, because back in the day when it was like, okay, yeah, you could sell it if it's Spider-Man, you could sell it if it's X-Men, you could sell it if it's Superman, but then you've got like The Walking Dead, you've got Preacher, and now more recently you've got The Boys and Umbrella Academy and all these that they're not well known, like outside of the comic book industry where they're mega hits. They're not well known properties, and they're speaking to audiences. And my hope is that like those studio executives realize, like, oh shit, you don't need to be a Marvel or DC property to have a great story to tell that people will enjoy.
No, I think the industry knows that. I mean, like, I'm pretty sure the industry's hip to that. So it's just the fact of like it's so hard, and so for other reasons too, to get something from paper to get it actually greenlit to be made as even a pilot, to getting it on the air and having it be successful. It's just so that industry's evolved in the last 15 years that I've been involved in it. I've seen it evolve tremendously, and like the competition level is at a different. It's just a different thing. It's just insane. I mean, I have this conversation with big name showrunners that run huge hit shows that are like, beaten down sometimes from this industry because it's just so tough, and like, you're lucky to get that one thing. So like something like you said, like if you like the boys, it is a good time for, I root for the success of any comic book property. I mean, even if you're quote unquote competitive, it's a very weird industry. Let me put it this way: comic books is there's a lot of bitterness and jealousy. It's like high school in a weird Like in the behind the scenes is crazy. Like I can't even tell you how much. And Joe and I don't come from this industry initially, and we were like for years like, why are we so hated on here? Because we were the outsiders. That's why we came into it not coming up. People wanted us to fail so bad that like that's how crazy it is. People like hate each other in this industry just because you're in the same industry. And it's kind of nuts. Like, but like, and we have friends like in this. We're friends with the guys. They're located 40 minutes from us. I've known Nikki for 15 years. You know, we're competitors in a way. We are of all people who should be enemies. We probably should be also family because we publish very similar shit. But we're cool. But there's other. It's crazy. And like it's just goes to show like I don't know. I guess my point is like that happens in film and TV too. Like it's competitive in comics, and as competitive as in comics, it takes like film and TV is to another level competitiveness because everyone and their mother is trying to break you. So I think that's where that logjam happens, and I think like there's only so many places you could sell something, and every network has a mandate. So every single there's sometimes it's like people be like, well, you should be on Netflix. It's like, yeah, but you don't understand. Netflix is looking for certain things at certain times, and if you don't fit that bill at the time they're looking for it, you're fucked. Like it's crazy how this industry works. You know, you just got to keep chugging away and hope you find that exec that kind of shares the vision and goes, you know what, I'm going to take a chance on you guys because, you know, your story's awesome. But you have to do so much work behind the scenes now. Like you got to find, you really do. You need to find a showrunner, a guy or girl who's done it before and who's been successful. And they have to be attached to your project and invested in your project, develop your project with you, and you have to have that pitch ready to go with this awesome showrunner. And you know how hard it is to find that awesome showrunner? Because they're working on 20 other things themselves. So it's not easy to find a showrunner. So it's like these little steps you have to take to just get to it. It's weird.
Production companies behind it and the whole thing.
So it's not, yeah. I mean, sometimes it's like you can chalk it up to being like, oh, well, these studios they don't see outside the box. And that can be true too. I'm not saying it's not. But then there's also the fact that there's just so much competition.
Well, we've already had you an hour, and I did time flew by. Let me ask you one last question just to kind of round out the interview. Zenescope obviously has been around since 2005. Looking back at its history, I mean, what stands out to you as kind of highlights, milestones, like what you're most proud of in the history of the company?
Selling that 10,000 copies of that book that somebody told us we would never sell. I mean, that's one of them. And I think like more recently, I think just being able to do our own thing. Filming this film right now and working on that project this past few months has been awesome and very rewarding because it's like kind of a dream come true for us. It's those little things like that, like those milestones that you hit that you don't always. Joe and I are very bad at taking compliments. We're horrible at patting ourselves on the back. We just don't do it. And everybody will want to be like, hey, aren't you proud of yourself? And it's like, we really have to be forced to do that. And I don't say that in a way of being, it just is how we are. We just don't, I don't know. It's hard. And I think that's for a lot of people. It's hard for us to appreciate our own accomplishments, no matter how big or little they seem. To you. And I think for everybody, any creative out there, I guess that's my one thing is that you should really do yourself a service and make sure you give yourself credit for the stuff you have done in any industry, in creative industry, and the successes you've had, because it's very, very hard. And so if you are an aspiring creative or done anything creative and have any success, you should really try to give yourself credit, because I think it's hard for us to do that a lot of times.
You're speaking right into my heart, man.
Yeah. Even at like, look, having a podcast, having a live stream, anything that you've accomplished, you're on the airways. Like, I think these are things that we don't always look at as like an accomplishment, because we're always looking forward and going, oh, I need to get here, I need to move here. And I think that's something I worked on getting better at it. So over the years, I'm not there, believe me, but I try.
Well, I want to say, like, this has been an amazing conversation, and I hope when it comes time to promote the big release or whatever that you promote it or fund it or whatever it is, man, you got to come back, and we want to push this thing hard and send you as many people as we can to watch it and enjoy it as we can, you know.
No, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you guys, and I know you have a huge military audience, and I know you have non-military audience too, but I appreciate you guys, you know, and thank you all for your service, because it means a lot to us, you know. So that's all.
I appreciate it. No, thank you. Well, everyone, social media. Where can people follow you? Where can people see what's going on?
Zenescope. Even though it's a mouthful, it is Zenescope. It's not Zenescope, but you can say Zenescope if you want. Z, anything. Facebook, Twitter, you know, all those.
They're everywhere. We tagged them on all the social medias. We made sure that
you'll at least see some covers you like.
Yeah. If nothing else, follow just for the gorgeous artwork.
Just for the cover.
The cleavage.
Come for the covers. Come for the cleavage, stay for the stories.
There it is. I love it. Awesome, guys. I am going to toss it to a small break so I can say goodbye to my guest. This has been Ralph Tedesco of Zenescope. Check him out. Look for all the amazing artwork. I've got a couple of collections and anthologies of my own, and we gotta collaborate some more in the future, man. We love your product, and we'd love to get it out to more people and get more people into it. So we'll figure out a way. We'll stay in touch and we'll figure out a way. So with that, I'm gonna say goodbye to the guest. We'll be back with more right after this.